Now we have some breaking news coming in. Prime Minister Modi has arrived in India after the G20 Summit. Siddhant continues to be with us. Siddhant, what are we getting from these visuals, and what else do we know about how the G20 wrapped up? Over to you.
Well, that's right. So Prime Minister Modi was on a visit to South Africa to attend the G20 Summit. In fact, Prime Minister attended all the three sessions of the G20 Summit. In the opening session, Prime Minister made four interventions. In fact, Prime Minister also held bilateral talks with many world leaders, including Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, Prime Minister of Italy, Giorgio Meloni, and in fact, the other world leaders. Prime Minister also held ISPA meetings on the sidelines, and in fact, one India-Australia-Canada trilateral initiative has also been launched. So it has been a very successful G20 summit for the Indian Prime Minister. In fact, it was an opportunity to meet the global leaders. Also, the achievement for India is that India's agenda finds resonance in the leaders' declaration, whether it's women-led development, whether it's food security, whether it's disaster resilience, whether it's all the agendas which were included in India's presidency was carried forward and also had served as a basis for the South African presidency. And in fact, it does find resonance, whether it's reforming the multilateral institutions. So all these, or whether it's condemning terrorism, all these key issues, perhaps, which India has been raising on the global stage, or India talks about, finds mentioned in the joint declaration. So it was a very, very successful G20 summit with regards to India. And now Prime Minister has returned after successfully completing his 3-day visit to Johannesburg.
Right. So the Prime Minister's another question to you. Does Prime Minister's G20 engagement really mark a shift in India's global strategy, now from regional leadership to a more central and global governance? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, look, India has always been engaging with the world leaders. And this time, India's presence perhaps is also, in a way, messaging which is being done by the Indian leadership, because United States boycotted the event. And in fact, India engaged with U.S. allies, U.S. partners, whether it's Canada, whether it's Australia, and whether it's United Kingdom. All the leaders met in Johannesburg, except United States. So it was, it was kind of, this is what Americans say for the BRICS, that it's anti-West. But the grouping at the G20, since US was not part of that grouping, and most of these countries which met have been slapped with heavy tariffs and have one or the other issue with the new administration in the United States. So one could say that there was definitely messaging, in terms of symbolism. This visit, Prime Minister Modi's presence in Johannesburg, has sent a lot of messages, perhaps, and the way his engagements were planned, the trilateral initiative between Canada, India, and Australia came like a surprise to each one of us. So, as I said, that US was not participating, but all other countries supported South African presidency. India finds resonance of its agenda in the joint declaration. So from last 4 years, the leadership has been with the countries of the global South, and that is definitely reflecting in the leaders' declaration. Now, next year, the presidency is going to United States of America. So again, this is for the first time it is happening after a long time that the emerged economy, developed economy, is getting the presidency. So overall, last 4 years have really been fruitful for the G20 grouping, as the agenda of the global South dominated the grouping. Now it is again going to the developed world. So in that regard also it is very, very important, and India and South Africa also are the members of the BRICS grouping. So that is also something which is very significant because it was the fourth visit of Prime Minister Modi to South Africa. So yes, definitely it was there was a lot of optics, symbolism, messaging at the same time, because as I said that Prime Minister Carney is not having a very great time with the new US administration. The same is the case with President Macron. India has also been slapped with 50% tariff. Australia, Japan, so all these countries met under one roof without US being present there. So,
Right.
Definitely this G20 was a bit special.
Right. Thank you, Siddhant, for your input on the matter.